We're back and we're speaking about a very important issue. It can be quite overwhelming sometimes to talk about the crime statistics in South Africa, in particular the violence against women and children. We've got CEO of Save the Children South Africa, Steve Miller, with us, as well as socio-political analyst Jamie Mighty, and we're unpacking some of the recent findings in terms of the crime statistics. So in terms of law enforcement, let's go there, right? What would you like to see as priorities put to the SAPS, the court system, as you've mentioned, in order to work some of this out of the system?
So I think it's a really good question, and I think, you know, one of the key pillars in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is a sort of overarching international framework for ending violence against children, is child participation.
Right.
And here in South Africa as well, we put a premium on child participation in theory. And what we really need is interactions with children directly, with people in positions of authority, whether that's at the local, provincial or national level, to explain what the issues are that they're facing and to have systems designed that are child-friendly. Today, right now, within a 5-kilometer radius of where we are, certainly there is a child who is afraid to go to the police station, afraid to present themselves as a victim, perhaps in their own mind, afraid of the reception that they will receive from policemen or policewomen who might not quite understand their situation. So yes, there's a role for training, but I think there's also much to be done in terms of putting children together with these authority figures and letting them interact and explain their issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And a policy framework. I mean, what do you think needs to be implemented to bring GBV as a whole to an end, or at least under control?
You know, Save the Children, we're part of what's called the Violence Prevention Forum. It's this unique grouping of people, experts in the space, from government, from civil society, individual experts who are working on violence to prevent violence of all kinds. And, you know, the discussions they have are illuminating. They try to influence policy. But in general, I think in South Africa, we know what to do. It's not for a lack of misunderstanding here. We have great plans. The National Plan of Action for Children is spot on in what we need to do to try and deliver here.
So where's the disconnect?
What's not spot on is, firstly, two things. One is leadership, and I really feel, yes, the President is taking up the mantle for GBV, which is a wonderful move, and people can discuss how that's going. But in terms of children, we need an Office for the Rights of the Child in the presidency. It needs to be mainstream. Secondly, we need investment. We've got the budget coming up. Children have to be at the center of that. We have to be thinking long term. We know what works. We know it's multifaceted, like Jamie is explaining. We know where we need to invest. We're just not doing it. The trade-offs aren't being made. So those issues, I think, are critical to us delivering for children and ending violence.
I mean, let's bring you back in here, Jamie. If we're talking about budgets, we saw some of the issues to do with budgets in the SAPS in the last few months. I mean, if we're expecting responsive police, if we're expecting well-trained police, is this something South Africa is backing itself to do?
Well, unfortunately, we're not seeing the kind of budget allocations which are necessary to have good policing, because we need more visible policing. We need all of the interventions that Stephen has spoken about. We need education programs to also complement that, so that young people understand what is and isn't a crime, what is and isn't harassment, what is common assault, why they shouldn't necessarily do these things. So I don't think that we are seeing a lot of long-term investment in the things we care about. And this is consistent whether it's education or crime. We often have a minister who will come and paint a dire picture and then say, I don't have enough budget. And then you don't see the arm of the state which has to allocate that budget actually prioritizing. We're moving from fire to fire, from ambulance crisis to ambulance crisis, and not doing enough to make sure that the interventions that we need most deeply are actually implemented by the state.
And you know, I seem to remember interventions like teddy bear clinics, or, you know, there'd be a room within a police station where very specific kinds of crimes against children are investigated, or people are received. I don't know how much that exists countrywide anymore, Steve.
Again, if I can come back to the prevention message, because
Yes.
it's all prevention, prevention, prevention. What we do in South Africa is we respond. When something happens, we sometimes get our act together and we respond. We provide spaces for people to go. We have alternative care system, etc. It doesn't work as it should do, but it's there. The argument is that, and our Children's Act speaks very clearly on this, we should be doing prevention and early intervention. But I think the deeper question, which I can't really answer, but again, back to this Violence Prevention Forum, which I urge your viewers to go and look at. You can find it online. But they have defined what violence prevention means. And there's a couple of things in there which require the whole of society. One is essentially that we need to heal this woundedness that we have as a nation. We have not been able to do that. We see it every single day in the news. We really have to somehow do that, but there's no easy answers. The second is, how do we foster a spirit of mutual care and respect in South Africa? It sounds idealistic or naive, but how do we get to that point where we mutually care for each other and respect each other? Then you will stop seeing children being murdered at these rates.
I mean, you're putting down such an important question, which really, Jamie, and you can add in here, you know, philosophically, kind of as African people, that kind of is the essence of a lot of what we aspire to be. But there is something that is completely missing, and I suspect, being a part of the violence prevention, I've just looked it up, and it talks at the heart of it about respect, empathy, deep democracy, active listening, commitment and courage, collaboration and partnerships, and of course fun, enjoyment, being able to connect on that level. Is it deep democracy, is it commitment and courage, or is it all of it that we should leave as the final message, that we'd like to hold leaders accountable, we'd like to speak truth to power? I mean, what's your kind of closing message, Steve?
Well, I would, you know, again, urge you to engage with Violence Prevention Forum and your viewers. These are incredibly smart people with lots of experience in this space, so dedicated, so passionate, and it's bringing us all together, which I think is what we need.
Yes.
So instead of us all working, I work for Save the Children, and our organization does some good work on positive parenting as an example, but we're a drop in the bucket here. And we need to join hands and work together across civil society, across government, bringing in people as well as best we can, but essentially holding hands through this and not working in our corners and not getting angry with each other and trying to find each other somewhere in South Africa.
I think we have a final few minutes. Positive parenting, break that down for us. What's that?
So in 2019, the Constitutional Court banned corporal punishment in the home, which effectively means you're not allowed to beat your child in the home. That was for good reason, because previously it allowed a parent reasonable chastisement, which reasonable for me is different to you. So now that's not an avenue that parents should be using, and we fully agree with that. Positive parenting is not easy. It requires a lot of your time and your patience. It requires you to respect your child from the very earliest moment. It allows you to let your child express themselves, to provide a stimulating environment for them, to get involved in their education, to be a good parent, essentially, and not resort to violence in any shape or form when you are raising this child. Because violence, I'll tell you, can often seem to fix things in the moment. It will stop a child from doing a particular naughty act, but in the long run, you're teaching something deeply wrong to that child.
Yeah, I often think about if you and I were sitting here having a conversation and you moved my book or my laptop and I slapped you.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
No,
and yet we do seem as parents to think that that's okay, or have historically thought so with our children. So it's a good thing to leave us with. Thank you very much. We'll have a look at the violence-prevention.org, and we'll also look at Save the Children South Africa. That is Steve Miller, CEO of Save the Children South Africa. And we did a little bit earlier have socio-political analyst Jamie Mighty sharing some insights into this conversation about crime and and murder. But I think, Steve, more importantly, about what some of the underlying factors are and how we can prevent these statistics being the way they are for a better society.